Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the Product-Led Summit, and especially this session on how to onboard at scale without sacrificing the personal touch. My name is Travis Kaufman. I'm currently the VP of Product Growth here at Gainsight, and I'd like to share with you how you can leverage your product to optimize the customer's experience in order for them to realize more value with your product and stay educated as your products change over time. So to start in, really, to talk about the challenge with customer onboarding today, I'll share a bit of my experience. My previous company, I was heading up product, and we were selling an enterprise offering, selling into one buyer, and that buyer then implemented our product into the rest of the organization. And so we had hundreds and up to cases of thousands of users of our product that we never spoke with. And so early on in our days, what we were doing to help onboard and enable that customer, we were hosting kickoff sessions. We had had a phenomenal customer success organization hosting with that primary champion and pulling team members in as best they could to help educate them. Well, what we found was happening was that the buyer would go out and roll out our solution into their organization, and the users didn't understand. Our product was built in such a way that they were not able to fully understand the value of our offering. So they were getting stuck. They thought it was working improperly. And this ultimately was a product challenge that we had. And the challenge that we'll articulate here is that we were doing a great job onboarding, a customer, which was looking at that in the lens of the champion that bought our solution. But what we weren't doing was onboarding those end users into our product as well. And so we were facing challenges is that our product was actually being kicked out of accounts, unfortunately for us. And we didn't start, we started this process to actually go resolve it by, rolling up our sleeves and moving into our more strategic accounts and hosting on-site sessions to train users. And again, that was a very, person-intensive way of trying to solve the problem. And although it had worked in the cases that we tried it, there was a turnaround and new employees joining that organization over time. And so it ended up becoming something that we needed to repeat. And again, this wasn't a sustainable practice for us. One of them, we couldn't afford to do this type of method across all of our customers. And so this really came down to how are we onboarding our customers, and not just the person who bought the solution, but the end users that were the ones realizing the value. And what we ended up, really acknowledging was that the user experience, it's happening within the product. And so what we needed to do was introduce a vehicle to educate and onboard users as a result of them using the product. They each had a different level of understanding of what our product did. They had different needs of what our product was helping them address. And so what we ended up doing was moving to a solution like Apptrinsic that was helping them, interact with the customers while they were using the product, and then helping us learn if it was working or not working. And again, we were actually at the tail end of the learning process where customers were coming to us saying, hey, we're going to stop using your solution because it's not working for our end users. And now what we're able to do is move way up in the information chain there to identify patterns in the customer's usage that would help us get indicators and information if what was working, if the changes we were making in the product were working or not. And so it changed how we collected feedback. Historically, we wouldn't find out that a customer was having a challenge with our offering until they filed support tickets, or they reached out to the success manager, or submitted their request to discontinue use. So what we ended up doing as part of us interacting with them in our product itself is that the things that we looked at to know if they were successful changed. We couldn't rely on a conversation with each of the users. We actually had to take advantage of looking at the kind of trends that all of our customers were doing, leveraging product analytics. We were looking at feedback that was coming back from surveys around specific capabilities across different user types. And we were also able to influence product adoption by engaging with users directly. So we introduced a level of in-app guidance, as well as informing them when things had changed. And so when we started to do this, we were really scaling our efforts around onboarding new users. When new users would come on board, we had a sequence of engagements within the product that helped them understand the offering to where they could realize the most value. And we ultimately saw that the churn impact declined as a result of us taking this different approach to the problem. So what I want to share with you today is really kind of 3 core product plays that you can execute that are going to help you scale your onboarding. So the first here, and this is one that we achieved in the past, was to onboard new users to the aha moments within your product. Okay, and we'll go into more detail. I'll share some examples next. The second item here is create release experiences to introduce new features, right? Your products are evolving. You want to make sure that as your customers, are evolving as your product changes. And the last item here is that you want to be able to re-engage users to complete critical tasks. To make sure that your engagement vehicle is not limited to just when they're in the product. There are times we want to bring them back. So here are 3 examples of product plays that you can use as part of your onboarding process. So the first example, onboarding your users to aha moments. So we had the honor of having Ken Rudin speak at one of our events recently, and these were some of the examples that he had shared. And he runs growth at Google. And this is an example from Google, looking at Google Drive. So the first time a user comes into Google Drive, they were previously given, a set of, slides that come that are presented. It's like, here's the value to you. Here's the messaging, the save everything, access anywhere, share with anyone. And what they found was they moved to this new model, which was actually a different approach. And then the idea here was that they were able to, the desired action was not to inform the customer what to do, but was it to guide them to do it, right? So actually to activate and use given feature sets. And so they actually moved away from this previous model into this new user experience, into where the users are guided directly to take the action, and they minimize the amount of upfront education, right? All of our users and customers are busy, and consuming information is not it's a very expensive task for them conceptually. So when Google made this shift, what Ken had shared with us was that they saw their user retention dramatically increase as a result of this particular feature being used. And now aha moments are different. Will be different across products. So here's another example here of an aha moment. So we're looking at Google Photos, and at the time this was introduced, there were a number of ways for people to share photo applications. There were a number of ways in which they could catalog things. But the aha moment here was taking advantage of Google's ability to index and search information without having to catalog it in advance, right? So this example here is when you type in dog on a beach, this aha moment saying, I didn't have to catalog any of my images, and yet I was able to come back and find them based upon information. So this was the aha moment at the time. And so another thing to keep in mind is that aha moments are going to change, right? If your competition or your other solutions on the market introduce the same capabilities, it's no longer necessarily an aha moment. It becomes somewhat of a neutralizing type feature set. So identifying aha moments and making sure that you're staying current with when they may or may not change. So the second item that we're going to discuss here is creating that release experience when you introduce new features. Historically, I've been a culprit of this, but I would take the approach that I see many of us doing in enterprise software. Was I have a new feature, I host meetings internally to inform my account teams, and I send my users an email. Right, I'll send my customers an email saying, "Here's all the new features, new release. Read it, live it, love it, use it." But that led to what I think most of us find is that the adoption rate of those newly introduced capabilities begins to decline. Customers have a saturation with what they're able to consume. And so what you want to do is make it as easy as possible to, when they are ready for usage of a given feature, to make sure that they know that it's available. So it's really a sequence of interactions that you're having with the customer in your product. So available now, right? I can distribute a release note via email, but I can also introduce through the application a dialogue that lets them know, hey, here are new things for you. If you're ready, we'll help you show you what they are. The second item is really onboarding users to those new features. So in this case, when a specific set of users are taking advantage of a solution, they are more likely to use another set of capabilities. So you want to make it easy for them to know what to do, right? Don't make it difficult for them to discover new features and figure out how to use it. And the second two items was really around getting the right information to know if what I had released as part of my product worked or not, right? So you're able to look at the adoption rate of the use of the feature by customers, and then also collect that feedback from them through surveys that are very specifically targeted to users who had adopted that feature. So let me share with you an example here. A new release experience, right? So in this case, Zoom communications, they could send an email out saying that their engagements just got better, all right? Their Zoom just got better, and here are the new features, right? Most organizations stop at this point, but what you can then do is the next time the user logs into your product, you can introduce and say, here's a catalog of things that are new. If you're ready to explore it, click next, and you can introduce the new capabilities this way. Now that next step was being able to then guide them to use that feature set. And now, as far as best practices go, you don't want to overwhelm your users. So in many cases, the things that we're releasing new are not things that are relevant for our first-time users. So making sure that you're able to segment your users and introduce these new guides based upon their previous product activity is going to lead to the highest chance of them adopting this new feature. So again, taking a very personalized approach over a kind of massive batch and blast type method. And the last item here was looking at adoption, right? So making sure that I could see which of my users and which of my customer accounts were adopting a given feature relative to the total number that were available, right? It gives me an idea of when I'm asked as a product leader, was this feature successful? I can come back and say, yes, it was successful as a result of over 60% of our customer accounts are adopting it, and 40% of the users within those accounts have used that feature. And that gives you kind of the breadth of adoption. And the last item here is being able to measure this. So making sure you're asking your customers and your users, was this valuable to them? We want to know if it was difficult, and we want to know if it was valuable, right? Those two things can help us decide whether something was successful or not. So the second component is just to keep in mind that onboarding is not just a thing you do for first-time users. That you want to, as your product evolves, make sure that you're onboarding users to new capabilities as well. And the last item that we'll cover here is re-engaging users to complete critical tasks. You'll see here 3 examples. These are all emails that are coming out to the users to bring them back into the product to complete an action. So you look here at Coursera, they're asking their learners is that, hey, the hardest part is to get started. Spend 10 minutes, come back and take this action. One of the keys to making this type of re-engagement activity successful is to base this upon an activity or a lack of activity that your users have done in your product. So in this case, Coursera, if they haven't been in the application for a period of time, being able to automate and bring them back into the product to, again, increase re-engagement, increase adoption, and help them realize that value. So to summarize these 3 product plays, you've got onboarding users to those aha moments in your product, right? Helping them understand the value the first time they come to your application. The second is to make sure that as your product evolves and you want to bring your users along and involve them with you. And the last item is to make sure that when users aren't in your product, you're able to, in a relevant and timely way, bring them back in to complete those critical tasks. So where do we go from here? Really, I'd like to offer really 2 different paths for you. You're welcome to download our ebook. It's at apptrinsic.com/book. And it's Mastering Product Experiences, which is really the core of what we're talking about when onboarding and scaling our onboarding efforts within our customers. And if for those of you who are leveraging some level of in-app engagement and product usage data to interact with your users, I welcome you to try out AppTrinsic. We have a free trial offering at apptrinsic.com. So we provide analytics for you to understand the breadth of usage of what your customers are doing in your product, a way to get qualitative feedback through in-app surveys, as well as engage and increase adoption through in-app engagements with your product. So enjoy the rest of the conference. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, tkaufman@gainsight.com. Thank you.